everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you as we wrap up our Be Relentless webinar series this week. Our topic this week is business management, and we've had some really interesting presentations. We did some networking on Monday, and then yesterday we had Joe with us talking about some of the pricing strategies. Now that we've got a price and people are buying homes, how do you negotiate that contract? And that is today's topic. We are very happy to welcome back Kathryn Carr. She was with us a couple of weeks ago. We got great feedback from her initial webinar, and we're happy to welcome her back. She is one of the trainers down at Century 21 in the US. And Kathryn, we've just been chatting for about the last 15 minutes, and you've got so much going on down there. And I will just let you take it away and talk about some of these contract negotiations.
I sure will. So one of the things we're going to do, let me go ahead and start my screen. And first, we're going to look at some of those good habits about what makes a good negotiator. You know, is negotiating skills something that, you know, you're born with? Is it a skill you're taught? And what makes for that true good negotiator? So that's what we're going to start at the beginning of the class off with. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to go into, now that we're looking at, and we looked at some of those 7 negotiation skills, how do we then align those for the virtual environment? So our first half is just going to be, for some of you that maybe aren't as seasoned as others, going over some of those strong fundamentals that you need to have in mind when it does come to negotiating. And then also at the end of class, we're going to go ahead and put it in what changes now that we're doing virtually. Sound fair? I hope it does. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the things we want to be able to do is also know your important reminders, whether, you know, it's in your territory. Follow your local regulations on social distancing. We want to make sure that you stay safe. We want to make sure your family stays safe. And we also want to make sure that your clients stay safe as well. So we're never going to ask you to do something that would be not in line with your local rules and regulations. Well, here I am. My name is Kathryn Carr. If you weren't here when I was first here, well, it's very nice to meet you. And now we have to work on getting me to Canada so I can meet you guys in person. I think I'd love that. But anyway, I've been with Century 21 for, I hate to admit, 40 years. I started my real estate license. I was actually getting listings between my junior and senior year in high school. So our state rules and regulations on licensing were very light back then, 4 decades ago. But the cool thing is I've been with Century 21 for a long time. I've been an agent. I've also been a broker manager, a coach, franchise sale, you know, you name it. I've been here, and I've been on the corporate level now for about 13, 14 years. And I absolutely love the ability it gives me to be able to actually come and do trainings for people outside of my area. So the 7 negotiation skills that can change your business, that's what we're going to look at. And the question is, are negotiators born or are they made? You know, many people believe it, either you got it or you don't. You have that swag, you have that carry. But you know what, realistically, they just learned the skills. A good negotiator isn't born, it's skill set that you've learned. Now, how did you learn it? Maybe you could have learned it at a young age, negotiating with your parents, teachers, friends, family, and you started those fundamentals really early. Or maybe it's something that you're just currently bringing into your career now and really fine-tuning some of those negotiation skills. I think some of my fine-tuning with negotiation skills was with my 20-year-old and really kind of pulling back, but I actually pulled back some of these strategies I'm going to share with you. So one of the questions we have is, what would happen to your business if you could master every negotiation? Every negotiation that comes your way, how would it impact your business? You know what? Your stress level would be gone. I think your stress level would be so much reduced, it would be enjoyable. Not only that, you know, you would walk a little stronger with confidence. You would walk a little stronger with pride, because you would know no matter what you got, you'd be able to bring it for a win-win for everybody. You know, whether it was getting your listings and negotiate your compensation, or whether it's negotiating a price for your buyer against the seller's agent, all those different things. If every one of your negotiations you could win, you know, think about how much taller, how much less stress you would have. So what are some of those key topics? This is where we're headed. You know, one of the things that good negotiators do, they end up getting more referrals. Your consumers enjoy working with you because you can manage that transaction. You can make sure that it's not a win-lose situation, but what's the best? And making sure that you keep your clients, their goals top of mind, and making sure that you're aligning those negotiation skills to align with their long-term goals. So that gets you more referrals. People enjoy working with you because they know that you can handle that transaction and handle all those steps that come into play, where negotiation is always a part. 1, higher commission splits, more compensation in your pocket. is one of those things when we're working on that listing-based business. It's going into the sellers and really being able to express your value, getting them to understand why that value is important and how it relates into your compensation. And then smoother transactions and relationships with everybody, whether it's a lender, whether it's an appraisal, an inspector, another agent you're working with. When you have those great negotiation skills that come into play, it really helps leverage not just, your transactional relationships, but your relationships all over. And I hate to even add, and it also helps your personal relationships with friends, family, and the people that you spend time with, learning some of these things. So we're going to look at two different concepts. One is position bargaining. The next one is value negotiation. Value negotiation, my wheelhouse. That's where I feel the most comfortable. But some people come in with that position bargaining. So let's look at some of the characteristics. It's the biggest one that I see. It's having that winner or loser. It's high stress. Either my guy's going to win or we're going to walk. Either you do it our way or you don't do it at all. If you don't do this, we're going to buy something else. We're going to sell, we're not going to sell. We're going to, it's always that win or lose, and becomes really high stressful, and it doesn't build the strongest relationships. You've probably been in some personal situations where it was that win or lose. I always see it in the car business, either you buy it or you don't, we don't care. We have plenty, somebody else will come in and buy it, and then you have those emotions. We're going to talk about how those emotions come into play. Value negotiation. This is where, we try to negotiate it for both parties, trying to get the best of everything for everybody involved, not really playing that win or lose, but how can we pull this transaction together? How can we make sure that we're hitting as many of those needs and wants from both sides of those parties? It allows for more flexibility. It allows for more conversation. And it allows you, one, to really build those relationships, because you're going to focus on what's their long-term goal. What, is it that the chandelier stays with a house, or can we just go, to Home Depot and buy another chandelier? Is it, are we really caught up on this? And I'm positive some of my seasoned agents that are on today have been in one of those where it was simple as a chandelier that was in the dining room or something that was in play, and really it could be replaced very easily and simply, but it became that tit for tat. It became that final straw. So when you do value negotiation, it's really making sure that you can keep emotions in check, keep people focused, and then really key in on those important things that really are in their mindset. So as we move forward and look at this, samples of some of the things we negotiate on the seller, and this is just a few. We negotiate our compensation, our commission, how we're getting compensated for the time and effort we're putting in. We negotiate, where we're positioning that house. What price are we putting on it? How are we going to list it? The length of time we're going to have it listed. Are we going to have it listed for, 90 days, 180 days, 365 days? How are we going to place it on the market? Are we going to have open houses? Are we going to, come out strong? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Again, how are we going to show it? Are we going to do staging? Are we not going to do, you see how the list goes on. Then we negotiate, the sales price when it goes into contract. Then we're looking at negotiating everything else that's in the contract. Who's paying for this? Who's responsible for that? What's the timelines? Financial concessions. Now the inspection came back and repairs need to be done. What repairs need to be done, what repairs should be redone, and what repairs have to be redone. And so working in that transaction. And here in the United States, NAR did a study, and there's 183 steps that go from bringing a property from list to close. So if you're that listing agent, you're actually going to work through that process of 183 different steps. And believe it or not, almost 60% of them require some form of negotiation. So we do this a lot, and we get good at it. It's just making sure that we're leveraging those abilities and fine-tuning the activities that we're doing. So words matter. Believe it or not, vocabulary is key when it comes to negotiation. One of the things that I like, instead of cost or price, think about utilizing it a different way. Maybe, for example, you're in a home and you're going for the listing, and you realize that, the house really has some major repairs that really should be done before it goes in the market. So instead of saying, hey, by the way, there's a bunch of things I really think you should fix, it's adjusting for deferred maintenance. As I walked around the house, I noticed that there was some deferred maintenance, and based on your situation, maybe you were or were not able to do it. Maybe there was an illness that just inherited the house. But because of the deferred maintenance, we're going to have to look at how we positioning something. Instead of talking about the price you put on a property, how we're going to position it in the market. Instead of commission, we're going to talk about compensation. So we're going to change some of those keywords. and be able to go ahead and put those into play. One of my favorites is, well, you know what, let's just go ahead and pull out that contract. It's, why don't we just go ahead and put everything in writing? That contract is so formal. It has poor connotations and associations with it sometimes. So you know what, why don't we just put everything in writing and then take a look at it? Understanding how that vocabulary can switch. And then, like I said, your compensation versus commission. Everybody's waiting for you to hear about the commission. Say, this is how I'll be compensated. And throw it off. Keywords are amazing. And the words you choose really can reflect different emotions. Again, going back to contract, that creates anxiety. It's final. You know what? Let's just put it in writing and look at it. It's the same process. It just sounds more user-friendly. So we're going to look at that. So let's go ahead and jump into some tactics and tools. What are some of those things we need to know to be able to put in play to get everything in line the best? Well, number one, be prepared. Got news for you. Got to do your research. Know your facts. Analyze the situation. Are they going to agree, disagree? Are they going to have more questions? And a lot of times when people disagree with something, it's really that you didn't answer those questions. So we need to make sure that we're going to prepare, whether you're going in for a listing, whether you're going in to present a contract, or whether or not you're going back to your buyer and presenting what that seller has come back with. You know what? We need to make sure that we have everything we need. On a listing side, you need to have your comps. On that buy side, now we went ahead and put our offer in, the seller came back, let's reevaluate the comps. Let's reevaluate what part of the contract. And we're going to talk about how that really switches and how we present a contract immensely switches when we move to a virtual platform. But we need to analyze, and what would be that win-win? Kind of know where that middle of the road is. Make sure you're asking great questions and open-ended questions. Develop those relationships with your consumer. So number one, you already know it. It's just like being a good Boy Scout, Girl Scout, you want to be prepared. Don't ever go into a negotiation and think you can just wing it. Or don't go in assuming that there's nothing to negotiate. There's always something, and it comes into play. And in some areas, it becomes very cultural, depending on their background, their personal history. Negotiation is just part of the process. And sometimes that means it's coming in very low because it's the act and the art. It's what they grew up with in their culture. So we need to make sure that we're aligning to that as well. And as you get to know your clients, you'll understand exactly where they're coming from. Number two, listening, and listening through the right lens. So what does that mean? It's not just listening to hear words. It's active listening. It's really making sure you're hearing what they're saying. And if I was in a room with you, I would say, okay, raise your hand, because how many of you have a significant other, somebody in your life, or even your dog, and you said A, B, C. And actuality, they heard X, Y, Z. They heard something completely opposite of what you said because they were hearing you, but they weren't listening. So what we want to do is we want to look at the three different types of really how we can communicate better through listening. One is informational. We listen to learn. We want to pay attention to really some of their word choice. Are they using emotional trigger words? What are they saying? Then we have critical listening. And that's, again, where it's coming into play. We're going to analyze. What actually are they saying? And that's when we really want to come back and say, hey, so what I understand is your most important goal is to, one, you need to transition out of the house fast. Due to a job relocation, you need to be able to get out of here as fast as you can with the most amount of money. And as always, the least amount of stress. Is that your number one goal, is to transition it as fast as you possibly can? And if they go, well, no, not really. Bob's company is going to go ahead and put him in an apartment. And if we have to, we can stay here. It's more important that we get X amount of value out of the home. So you know what? In that critical listening, that's when you really want to make sure that you're taking notes. And you know what? Best way to listen, it's the easiest way to listen. Ask permission to take notes. So if I said, you know what, David, I really enjoy our time here today. I have some questions. And as we talk, is it okay if I just go ahead and jot down some notes? Because I want to make sure that I'm writing down and making sure we're hitting all those key aspects that you're going to be sharing and that we're going to be talking about. When I ask permission to take notes, it automatically tells David, one, I'm going to listen. Two, what he says is important. And then three, it also gives me time to think. It gives me those windows where I can go ahead and write something down and think about it for a few seconds. And leveraging silence, we're going to talk about that. Then we have that, we're going to use our emotions when we listen. We're going to, be a little therapeutic, a little empathetic, and listening to understand their feelings and emotions, because especially when in real estate, we have a lot of emotions. It's stressful. they're leaving a house where their children were raised. They're leaving their very first home. They're retiring into their final home. There's a lot of different emotional stages, and we're going to talk about how emotion comes into play a little bit further. But you know what? It's really listening for some of those trigger words. And sometimes when emotion's in play, guess what isn't? Logic. So sometimes we have to deal with that emotion, deal with that fear, and then come back to the task at hand. So listening becomes number 2. Utilizing active listening techniques. Absolutely. And withholding our judgment. We've heard people tell us something and we roll those eyes. Yeah, I mean, I do it. I hate to do it. My eyes don't lie. Sometimes, it's just like, oh my Lord, and we do that. So what we have to do is make sure that when we hear something, we can digest what we're hearing internally and not actually, hopefully, not show it in our tone, our rate, our body language. All of a sudden they say something and I'm going, okay, you're not listening to a word we're saying. We're going to lose this deal. And then I go ahead and cross my arms. My body language changes. I'm looking up at the sky. I'm not paying attention to them. What I should do is make sure that I lean in, make sure that I'm making good eye contact, and listen to them. And then again, go back in and clarify. Be attentive. Use your body language. We're going to talk about body language virtually. It's really a lot easier when you're in a room with them to be able to feel their emotion, be able to pick up on some key triggers. And make sure that you end in open-ended questions. One of my favorite questions when it comes to negotiation. So David, from what I understand, this is your number 1 priority. Well, no, Kath, it's really this, but I just got caught up because I can't believe that okay. So, listen to all the caught up stuff, agree with it, align with it, but say, okay, but let's go back to your number 1. And then let's go back to your number 2. Really define also as you're going through this process. Be prepared, to have that preconceived idea. And watch out for assumptions. Oh, I know when I bring this back to them, they're never going to counter this, or they're never going to want this, or they came in so low. Get some of that out of your head. You don't know how people are going to respond. We'll get to that a little later on in today's class as well. So we want to be able to look at and make sure that we're not putting our own bias in play. That really, we're trying to keep our emotions checked, our suggestions in check, and really make sure that we're working towards that transaction. Paraphrase and clarify. We talked about that. And then also summarize. So from what I understand today, this is really some of your key areas that we need to focus on. And that if we can hit the first 2 or the first 3 and be able to do it in this time frame, we're going to define what a success is. This will be successful. You're going to be happy with the results. Align with where actually is their true goal. Understanding the role of emotions. If you haven't picked it up, I've talked about emotions a lot already. And we're going to get in a little deeper once we get into that virtual play about watching those emotions as well. So it is an emotional process. So what we have to do is, again, always remember their why. Why are they moving? Why are they buying? And what's their why behind it? I was in South Florida in real estate, and we have a bunch of people that retire, and then their children start having children, and now they have grandchildren. So they want to get closer to their grandchildren. Nothing more motivational to me than a grandmother that wants to be close to her grandchildren. Same thing in Canada. They want to be close to those little babies. And, aligning back to that and saying, you know what, Alice, I really appreciate, and I really see what you're trying to do. But you got to remember your number 1 focus on why you were selling was so you can get to your grandchildren. So now with everything that's going on, would you rather be there so you can help support your children and how they're trying to manage their job and take care of the kids? You could really be beneficial. Or is it worth, another 60, 90 days? What's more important to you? Being there to be supportive or being here? And we're negotiating over $2,000. Where's that important slot? Being able to bring them back. Attune and reflect to their feelings. There's nothing wrong with alignment. They're upset. That's okay. Let them be upset. Acknowledge that they're upset, but it doesn't mean you have to mirror that. You don't have to get upset along with them, because all you're going to do then is put more fuel on the fire. So monitor your reactions and your responses. So you know what? You can go in your head between that largest piece of real estate right here between your ears, and you can go and say anything you want to, but be careful what comes out of your mouth. Also be careful again about that body language. Pay attention to their nonverbal. Again, like I kind of showed you, they start looking up, they start turning away. We've seen all these behaviors before, and they come and play even more in a virtual format, and even worse in a virtual format. It's really easy for them just to go click and disconnect. They're mad, they're upset, they're clicking and disconnecting, and now you're trying to call them, you're trying to reconnect in the meeting, and they're completely disconnected. And it's not like you can just go ahead and say, you know what, here, let me step out of the room. You guys talk and then we'll come back in. Or, you know, John walks out in the parking lot, paces a little bit and comes back in because his wife is still here in the room. So, you know, we have to look at those emotions, and we have to remember we're that sounding board, but we're also that solid foundation. We can be upset and we can be disappointed, but what we have to be is strong. We have to be able to really hide our emotions, keep them in check, and be able to get their emotions in control. Listen, let them vent, and then be able to move forward. You know, when there's no movement going on, you know what? I'm taking my ball and going home. You know, I'm not, you know, this isn't the right market for me to buy. This isn't the right market for me to sell. I'm going to take my ball and go home. The biggest thing in here, that stall can become a dead deal, you know, and sometimes we've all seen it, or my new agents, ask my experienced agents that are in your office, you'll hear their stories. Those stalls all come into play, you know, and I call it that I'm taking my ball and going home theory, because nobody wants to play with me the way I want to play. Okay, so you got to remember, why are they there in the first place? Their why is extremely important. Okay, so you wanted to be able to have this home so you could put your boat in the backyard. You're right across the street from the ocean. It has every location that you want. This is where you're going to retire. It has every amenity that you want. And what's stopping you from fulfilling your dream is a $1,500 refrigerator, or we're $5,000 apart, we're $10,000. You know, break that money down to daily costs. So really, when we look at it, the cost of going, you know, and getting a hamburger at McDonald's is keeping you from buying this house. You know, well, no, it's just the purpose. Okay, so what is the purpose? This is everything you said you wanted. And now, you know, you've had some reactions you weren't anticipating. So really, you know, is this still what you want to do? And get them to go back, get them to realign, and then get a little bit of movement. Sometimes don't look for that big win when you get in that stall area. Look for that little bit of movement. So you know what? Why don't we just ask for a few more, you know, why don't we ask for another 24 hours to respond? Instead of that immediate response, let's digest it, let's reflect on it, and let's make sure that everybody knows that what we're offering back is an extension on this offer for another 24 hours. You know, let's sleep on it. Let's calm down. Let's really reflect. Let's go back and review the property. Getting them back into the property when you're in a stall is a win, because they want it. It's desirable. It's what they're looking for. You know, be willing to walk away. Sometimes you got to support that, you know, really depending on, you know, is that other negotiator, is that other part of that transaction that you're negotiating with, is it, you know, either my way or the highway? And if there's not any move, I've been in negotiations where I've actually seen them increase the price. Well, you know what, we decided that we just want more for the property. Well, okay, but you know what, you know, that you can't always do that. So, you know, there's certain people that just aren't going to sell. A friend of mine's going through a transaction right now. He wants full price for the house. It's 1.6 million. So he wants all cash. Oh, he wants full price, 1.6. He wants all cash. You're not allowed to use an attorney. He wants it to go through a title company. He wants to pick the title company, and he wants the buyer to pay for it. So he wants full price, all cash, no attorneys involved, the house to be bought as is with no inspections. So is that actually a reasonable seller that you want to be representing in the market? You know, they want full price, cash, no attorneys. They want no inspections. They don't want it contingent on an appraisal. And they want to be able to choose the title company of their choice and have somebody else pay for it. They're not realistic. Sometimes, you know, you have to be willing to walk away. And it's knowing that. And then also, if you have a buyer and you're going up against that seller, you know, your buyer, you need to protect them. They need to have an appraisal. They need to have an inspection. And if they feel that they want an attorney to be able to review it, they have that right. So how do you balance those things out and be able to see, is this a good one or is it not? Is this just going to be flirting with disaster? If so, you know what? Maybe there's another property that's best for them. So be prepared for that one. Best play is everybody wins. It's being able to find that balance. It's not going for the I win or you lose, but it's going for that transaction. And that's one of the blessings that I have in my real estate career in the state of Florida. We represent the transaction. So we're always playing for the best of that transaction, for the best of both parties, unless we have a single agency. So I really like this win-win, Because as long as you can bring both people to the table, they both feel that they're leaving with some wins. Maybe they're both also leaving with some loses. But you know what? It gives that relationship building. You're not going to that table where, and I've seen it. I've seen where the buyer will not get in the room at the closing with the seller, and we have the seller in one room, the buyer in another room, and they're moving back and forth signing papers because they don't even want to see each other. Is that really that relationship? Is that really that feel behind you want to leave with your past client, whether they're the buyer or the seller, whether they're right or wrong? You really want to make sure that it's smooth and professional. So again, looking at some of these. So we went through those 7. So now what changes when we look at the virtual world? Well, you know what? Some of them really don't change that much, but there's some you need to be aware of. You ready? Let's go ahead and jump in. So in the virtual world, first thing you got to do, pick your platform. How are you going to present? And it depends what you're presenting as well. Zoom you have 45 minutes and you can do the free account. You have 45 minutes. You can have people in there, but the minute your 45 minutes is over, you're done, your meeting's over. So what can you present in that 45 minute unless you go ahead and pay for the upgrade version? You can do FaceTime. Love FaceTime for some things, dislike FaceTime. The reason why is FaceTime can't be recorded. So you can FaceTime with somebody, but once that conversation's lost, or once maybe you're showing that house, walking them through, letting them see what the inspector found, re-showing the house, maybe doing that final walkthrough virtually, it's something they can't reference back to. So one of the great things, and I'll share it as we go through, I got some great hits from some agents that really are embracing this virtual piece. So as we go through the rest of today's class, I'm going to share them with you. How do you share information? That's one of my favorites because you're going to do it differently. You're going to have to readjust, and some of you may already be doing it, but we're going to talk about how you readjust what you present, how you present, and when you present. Body language. Your eye contact. Are you leaning in? Are you leaning out? Are you just looking at something else? Are you not paying attention? How are you being visually perceived on that other end is really important. Sometimes what I suggest is go ahead and put yourself in, but put yourself in the meeting on a cell phone. See how you're presenting, practice. So we'll talk about that. And then again, we're going to look and take a deeper dive into that stress, especially with COVID going on, social distancing going on. Every family I know has been affected one way or the other, either with now teaching their children, with family, with illnesses. There's always been something, job loss. So everybody's under that little extra stress. So how do we understand that stress and how can we work around it? Pick your platform. These are some of the platforms that are very famous here in the US, but you know what? Find your own. Zoom, love it. It's cost affordable. You don't have to pay for a lot to be able to go ahead and utilize their paid version. But you know what? What I want you to do is pick your platform and be able to leverage it successfully and be able to get to know it. Google Hangouts, Join Me is a really nice one. FaceTime. So where does FaceTime come into play? You know what? One of the best practices that I found is some of the agents are using Facebook. Okay, so they're doing live Facebook. But what they're doing is they're taking the live Facebook. So I'm taking me and my pretend client, David, and his wife, Alice, and we're putting them into a private group on my Facebook. So the only people in that group are me, David, and Alice. So now when I do FaceTime Live, I can go ahead and I can take my phone, log into FaceTime, go live, and I can take them around the house. I can show them what the inspector said. I can show them, different things about the house. We can do a walkthrough. But because I did it in that in that Facebook private group, they have that whole library of all those videos. So it's really kind of a cool thing, especially if you have a buyer that's looking at multiple properties and you're doing virtual showings with them. They can go back and compare one property with the next property with the next property. Now with Zoom and other features, they're going to have to go back and look at that Zoom meeting links. You're going to have to make sure that you share the links and they have them. So I really kind of like that Facebook piece where they go ahead and create individual groups. And sometimes he's actually had sellers who he would invite into the group. They would then use their smartphone, give them a tour of the house, answer questions about the house. They would leave and then he'd disconnect them from that group. But still there was that recording of what did that house look like? What did the seller say? And it gives them a reference point. So, but anyway, master your technology. Pick your platform and stay with it. Look at platforms that don't require specific technology. Make sure that they're easy and simple. They don't have to download a bunch of things to be able to utilize them. So again, there's some of them that are really out there that do an amazing job. Next, okay, look at your virtual mindset. Do your research. Again, you're gonna have to do your research. But so you said, Kath, you talked about doing your research, having all your facts, having all your figures. Here's the difference. How are you sharing them? Normally, when it's face-to-face and David and I are sitting at a conference room table and he has questions, I can pull up my comps and we can talk about the comps and we can look at the comps. He has questions about some market statistics. I can pull up my market statistics. And I have everything very structured and very organized in my little folder. Well, you know what? You need to do the same thing when it comes to the virtual game. You may go ahead and present, and as you're presenting information, make sure that you're not presenting information that they're not asking for. Sometimes here your killer is too much information, can go ahead and create issues where there wasn't an issue. Maybe you have an issue with the asking price. Maybe they're very fine. They want to come in relatively close. So, going ahead and sharing and anticipating, you need to do that. You need to anticipate that 1, either they're going to accept it, 2, they're going to negotiate it, or 3, they're going to decline it. But have your bundles of information, just like you would in your desk on your folder, that you can actually share and pull out one at a time. Do the same thing with your computer. Do the same thing with your technology. Go ahead and create that folder that you're presenting if you're negotiating a contract or even presenting a listing. And then pull out single things at a time. You may want to talk about the comps in the market on a listing. So pull up your file on your comps, or maybe you already have it in your listing presentation that you're sharing with them and be able to talk about it. But if they ask more detail, have it handy where you can go ahead, pick it up and share it. Maybe they're fine. You go ahead and talk about positioning it on the market. They have no complaints. But if the next piece of document you have to show them talks about, why they should not list at that price, or here's the pros and cons, if they already agreed to it, you don't want to bring up a pro and con about it. So remember, as you think about what you're going to be negotiating, so for a listing, the length of time, the positioning price, your compensation, have those things individually in different buckets. So you can go ahead and activate those as you need them. But if you don't need them and they're not an issue, don't bring them up. So prepare to also have an agenda. Let them know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and give them an estimate of how much time it's going to take. And again, have your agenda aligned with your content. We're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about 2, then we're going to go to 3. Make sure that they know. Give them an idea of what they're anticipating, because it's very new to them and it's new to us in some cases. So we want to make sure that they really know what is the goal. If it's a listing, the goal is to go over the information about the house. Maybe they're going to take you on a virtual tour. Maybe you've been there on the virtual tour, now you're presenting that listing. And then, so now that we talk about the house, we talk about some pros and cons of the home, then we're going to talk about, how does that compensation come in? Then we're going to talk about marketing. Then we're going to talk about, positioning and all those different pieces. Put them in your path. Put them in the path that makes the best sense. But share that with them so they know where things are coming, because they're going to be looking for that compensation and positioning. They're going to want to know what's the price and how much compensation. So give them an idea of when that comes into play. Doing that is going to give them the ability to digest the information as you're sharing it. The next thing, practice, practice, practice. Have your friends come in, get another computer or sign in on your iPad, sign in on your phone, see how you practice. Dress the part. Dress your professional that you normally do and that's customary in your marketplace. Just because you're only being seen from the waist up doesn't mean that what you're being seen, get rid of that baseball cap, get rid of the t-shirt, get rid of the scrunchies. You know what? If your normal dress is wearing something that's very professional, that's what you should be wearing when you're presenting. I have on nice slacks today, shoes, did my hair, put my makeup on, and I have a blouse that fits our weather right now that we have. So you know what? Think about aligning in the same way. Also, I would think about putting your Century 21 name badge on. Again, the professionalism counts. Also, look at your posture. Don't do this and hang back and swing around in your chair and do this. Stand up straight. Look at your head space within the camera. See how you align. Is your head really small and little, or are you positioned well? Also, look about lighting. Make sure that you have positive light. If you have your lighting that comes in from behind, you're going to be nothing but a big black head, and they're going to see the window behind you. So really make sure that you align, but practice. Make good eye contact. And what's one of the best keys about making good eye contact? Make sure that your computer is at the right height. I am so frustrated about looking up people's noses. You probably have seen that. People that are presenting and their computer is shooting them this way, or they're looking at their computer that way. Align your computer to your eye contact. Even if you have to put some books, it makes it easier for you to present, makes it easier for the consumer. Or look at some different resources. So you want to be able to do that. And get comfortable with the camera. The way I get comfortable with the camera, I don't actually have that little video box to see myself. I get lined up in the very beginning, and I hope that I stay pretty much in that right frame and spot, and I kind of know where I need to be. But if I end up watching myself, I get distracted. So learn that you can minimize that camera so you're not actually seeing yourself. Play out scenarios. Remember I talked to you about having that file folder? Name it. You know what? Pricing objection. Pricing objection a little high, pricing objection a lot high. Terms and conditions. Go ahead and name them so when you need to be able to pull something up, you can access it fast and go ahead and share it. But remember, you don't want to share everything because we need to anticipate that some things they'll agree with and some things they won't. So we need to be able to move forward. If they agree, it's not an issue. We don't want to show them content. If they disagree, we need to go back and re-educate. Make sure the content's handy. So also lock in your commitment. Know what you want to get. What's your goal? What's their goal? When it comes to a listing, you want it within your time frame, within a marketable price, and for what's going on and trending in your current market. And we also want the proper compensation. Make sure when you get those alignments, as you're going through your agenda, mark them off. And really use your agenda as a guide. If you don't have a buy-in, don't go to the next step. Make sure you're getting a buy-in. Make sure they're seeing the value of your marketing, the value of what you present, and the value of what you just shared. And always get clarity with questions. In today's format, it's a little difficult because we're doing that live stream. So we get the questions at the end. But as you're going along virtually, make sure that there's time for questions. Go back and confirm with them. Where are they at? How are they comfortable? And how's that process moving forward? So sharing content, here's the thing that's a little different. Normally when we're sharing content and we're at, especially when it comes to presenting an offer, we go to their home, they meet us in the office, and we hand them a copy of that contract and we go over the contract. Well, you know what? You don't want to do it. What you want to do is hold that contract. You're going to present that contract when you have your virtual meeting. So don't send it to them before you actually get to present it to them. Why? You want to control the conversation. And you know what? I want you to work backwards. Okay, so why do I want you to work backwards? Some of you already do it. There's a lot of different things that we look at within a contract. We have obviously price, we have down payment, we have financing, we have contingencies. So are they getting a mortgage? Are there inspections? Who has to pay for the inspections? Is there appraisal? And when are they closing? Go for the easier yeses first. Normally the easier yes is closing date. So, start from the back of the contract. So for example, you know what? They really want to be able to close on the offer that we got. They want to close June 30th. Are you acceptable to that? Yeah, that works for their timeline. Well, great. You know what? I love it too. It works really good for me. June 30th is a great day. So we're set on that. The next thing is that they want to be able to go have inspections, and they're going to go ahead and get those inspections done, and they're going to have them done before June 1st. So that's going to give us some time if there's any kind of repairs that need to be done. It really gives us a nice long window. Does that work for you? Yes. Got another yes. Then we're going to talk about, well, you know what? They've already been pre-approved. We have a copy of their approval letter, and they're looking at getting a mortgage for X amount of percent. Are you comfortable with that? Yes. Well, you know what? They're also, because of that, they're putting down X amount. A smart consumer is now doing the math. But what you're doing is you're getting a bunch of yeses in, especially if you have a contract where you feel that there's going to be some confrontation or there's some negotiation on that offer price. So you know what? Get all the buy-ins, because now you can say, well, you know what? The great thing is they're putting down X amount for their down payment. We already have that. They're doing 2 down payments. We have another one that's coming in, and this is their offer. But before you respond, let me know everything else in the contract you're good with. So we really only at this point need to negotiate one single thing. So can you see the benefit of working it backwards, getting the yeses? Because now if you go ahead and you work it forward, the first thing is that price. And when you get to that price, that becomes your biggest thing. And sometimes they don't even want to pay attention. The rest of the offer could be perfect. Could be exact. They're willing to pay for all the closing costs. They're willing to do this. They're willing to do that. They're willing to take the house as is with the right to inspect. Could be a dream contract. But if they get stuck on the price, you never have that opportunity to present it. So get them used to saying yes. Get them used to those minimal adjustments. Well, you know what? Instead of June 30th, because we'd rather have June 15th. Okay, well, that's great. I don't see that would be a major problem. Being able to get those buy-ins and those yes and the small things you need to negotiate before you throw out that big one. So it's a little different because you're going to work backwards, but I'll tell you what, you'll be a lot more successful with taking that capture in. So look at body language. Today I showed you some of that body language, that rolling the head, crossing your arms, leaning back, getting out of focus, getting back in focus. Remember the amazing thing? Every platform you have has a mute button. So if you just really want to go and you want to turn your head for a second, pretend you're coughing and saying, I can't believe they said that, hit the mute, say, hold on a second, pretend you're coughing, thus Adam, just make sure you're on mute. No, not actually. But, think about it. Every once in a while, you need to turn your camera off. If you really feel that need that you just want to go, don't do it so they can see you. Say, hold on a second, let me just adjust my camera. Go ahead, do that, do whatever you need, and then come back on and go back on camera. So what's the importance about being on camera? The importance about being on camera is eye contact. And it's also about seeing them, seeing how they're responding, seeing how they're engaging. Are they listening or are they multitasking? Is one person in front of the computer and you have their undivided attention and the spouse is walking back and forth in the room managing something else, it's not paying attention. Try to get all parties involved just like you normally would. But watch that body language. Watch your eye contact. You want to keep it as steady and as true as you can towards that conversation. So some of the things that we want to be able to do is, one, you want to control the room, just like you would as walking into a conference room or just as you would in walking into their home. It comes with preparation. It's knowing what you need and being comfortable in your environment. You want to go ahead and express confidence. So, doing that in the virtual, it's the same thing. It's having your facts, having your figures, and knowing what you're going to talk about. It's being prepared that on some of the things you're going to talk about, there's going to be some conversation. There's going to be some negotiation, or there's going to be additional education. Have that needed and have it ready. Again, we talked about eye contact, tone, and pitch. Look at your tone of your voice. Look at the rate and speed of your voice. You want to always kind of stay calm, but also excited, that we don't want to get fertile. Leverage the power of silence. Remember that old thing we've always heard, whoever talks first loses? I teach classes all day long, and in my interactive classes, I'll ask them a question and I'll sit there and I'll count to 9 and I'll give them 9 seconds. And you know what? Most of the time, by 3 or 4 seconds, I have volunteers. They're putting it in the chat box. They're raising their hand. They're coming off mute, because silence will create conversation. So don't be afraid of leveraging silence. And there's a lot of other things that you can leverage as well. Just making sure that you're engaging with them and that you're answering their questions, but also ask great questions. So let's explore some of those things. Again, controlling the room, know your platform. And confidence is your research. And I'm sorry, because I thought the slide was coming up. Personal contact, it's leaning forward. It's having those eye moments. It's really kind of listening. And then the power of listening, we hit that and we talked about that mute button. So now let's talk about stress. The brain works in a unique way. It says, okay, there's going to be a situation. Yep, they want to come. They got an offer on the property. Okay, is it good? Is it bad? Or do we not know? That's going to be that first reaction. So even before you start presenting, they're going to go, okay, is it a good offer? Is it a bad offer? Is it a low offer? Are they offering us more? Or do we have more than one offer? All these things start going on in that head. So what we need to do is realize, how can we adapt to those behaviors? If it's good, it's pretty much great. We just move forward and go on. If it's neutral, okay, those emotions come into play. If it's bad, this is where some of those things happen. They stop listening. So now all of a sudden, they're not even looking at you. They're leaning back. They're having a conversation on their own. And now you're trying to go tap, 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 tap. Come on back. Listen to me, because I really have something. They're getting clouded judgment. Remember I said, align with their emotions, let them vent. Let them go off on a tangent. And then bring them back and say, okay, you know what? I understand how you feel. And be able to listen and bring them back. So, but remember, your number one goal is to do this or to do that. Also look at, you're going to notice their heart rate. Some people turn very flushed. My face gets red when I get upset, and you can tell it. My face does not lie. Our blood pressure goes up, our heart rate changes. So we have physical changes, but also we have behavioral changes. So the question is, who's responsible for it? You're the cooler. You're the one that has to calm everybody down and bring everybody back. And if your emotions come back up and then you bring your emotions into play, you're never going to be in a healthy spot unless you're celebrating success. You know what? Hey, great. They gave us a full price offer. They're willing to do everything. We got it. No problem. Celebrate. And your happy emotion, great. You get defensive because maybe now they're questioning you. Maybe now they're questioning your ability. How could you bring them this offer? How could you ask for that? You know what? We need to remember, they're never upset at you. They're upset at the situation. So you know what? Make sure that you're keeping that in play. So remember, when it comes to emotions, what do we know? Somebody's always going to react either positive, negative, or neutral. There's your only 3 choices. So be prepared for all those. Be prepared. If they react positive, cool, it's not an issue. You don't need any supportive material. Move on to the next step. If it's negative, let them vent. Listen to them. Find out. Ask them, and just think, I really feel that that this was surprising to you. What were you thinking? Where did you think it was going to come in at? What was your anticipation? Ask those great open-ended questions. Get them talking. And you know what? And remember, their emotional alignment will align to the strongest person in the room. That needs to be you. Your job as a real estate agent, is to understand and to help them to make good decisions. We don't sell their home for them. We don't buy, we don't list it. They list it and they list it with us. Our job is to explain what happened. And we're going to talk about feel, felt, and found. That is the best thing to understand, especially when those emotions start to come into play, and then bring them back to their goal. That's why it's important to take notes. You can't think you're going to remember everybody's goal and everybody's why. So fear and those emotions come into play. Desire, they want it. They're willing to, sell their jewelry for it. They're willing to give up their lifestyle for it. They want it. Then we have fear, and sometimes it's fear of loss. It's fear, if we just waited for one more deal. My experienced agents, you've seen that. Sometimes the best offer that comes in is the first offer. But because that offer was so good, they want to see if they can get another. But, and greed. We look at those buyers and sellers. The seller wants to get it for the cheapest amount. The seller wants to get it for the most amount. And the buyer wants to get it for the cheapest amount. So where is that greed coming into play? How important is it to save that $1,000 or $3,000 or, and is that win or lose? And then there's anger. How could they dare say that about my house? How could they dare expect me to do that? How could they dare? And it's that frustration. So the best way to manage all these is get clarity. From what I hear, from what I heard, you say, blah, 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 blah. This is what you're telling me. Then this is where that feel, felt, found. It works every time. It works for different situations. You know what? I truly understand how you feel. Other sellers have felt this way. And what we found is historically, some of the very best offers that we ever get for a property are the first few offers we get. So let's go back and look. What's important to you? Leverage that feel, felt, and found. I can't believe they turned down my offer. I thought it was a good offer. We came, within 20% of asking price. You know what? I understand how you feel. And I got news for you. Other buyers have felt that way, coming in the market a little lower. I did share with you that in this current market, we're only negotiating about 7%, and we came in at 25% less than asking price. So what I found is that we need to be a little closer to what the market's giving. But I truly understand how you feel. Feel, felt, found. It will work wonders, and it works wonders even better with that virtual environment because you're aligning with them, you're listening to them, and you're letting them have that opportunity to vent. You're letting them have that opportunity. So when we look at emotions also, there's 3 different levels. One is silence. Got to be careful about silence. So we have silence, simmering, and scary. You know what? Which one would you think is the worst? Well, silence is there's no emotion. They're just sitting there. What I find with silence is basically they've stopped listening. So what we have to do is get them talking. So at least they're listening to somebody. Then we have that person that's simmering. You can see they're upset. Their blood pressure's changing. Their attitude's changing. Their eyes, their voice is sharp and to the point. So again, simmering, what do we have to do with them? We have to find out what were they thinking? What was their anticipation? What was their expectation? Again, get them talking. The scary one that goes, wah, you know what? And everything is, and it's bad and it's just there. They attack everything, Remember, in all these cases, feel, felt, found, but you have to stop and recognize because you may have somebody who's still moving forward, but yet that spouse has just become silent or that spouse is simmering. Don't just keep on moving forward. Stop and acknowledge the emotions that are in the room. Scripts and role play in Century 21 University, we have a huge script library. And not only do we have our scripts for all different situations, we also added now, it's called #stay-at-home. There's scripts that are a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more leveraging that. I understand how you feel. Other people have felt that way. However, this is what we've found. It's being able to, and that really gives you in setting that level of an expert, setting that level of, what's going on, that you're being able to do that. So moving forward, Do me a favor, pick and commit, build your plan, practice, pick your platform that you're going to use. There's a lot of them out there, and practice it. Invite your friends and family in to do a role play, invite them in, but even just create silly one-off meetings with somebody that's in your house, just so you can practice how to start the meeting, how to mute, how to use your video, and be able how to leverage. Practice owning objections. Really leverage that, you know what, I truly understand how you feel. Other people have felt that way. And this is what we found. Also practice those conversational wins. Think about being able to really do some great listening skills. We have another class that we suggest, and it's called Owning Objections. It's all about objection handling and different ways to be able to leverage objective handling in a little deeper dive. Some of the books I suggest, 2 of them. One, a great negotiating class, a great negotiating book is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I really love it. He was an FBI and a federal government hostage negotiator. He has taken negotiation classes from Yale, from Harvard, from everywhere, from the United States government. And he really talks about how to ask some different questions and the process behind some of those negotiations. One of his techniques that I really love is get them to say no first. So from what I understand, you're not going to accept this price. No, I'm not. Okay. Well, then what price are you going to accept? Where are you thinking? So get them to say no, because once they say no, it's already on the table. So then it's moving from there. The other book is Just Listen from Mark Goldston, working on key listening skills. Remember, we have those 3 different levels of listening, and being able to do active listening, being able to do empathetic, align with their emotions, pay attention to actually what they're saying, not what you want them to say. So those are 2 great reads. And with that, I am done. So do we have any questions? And did any questions come up?
Yes, thank you. We do have questions, and if people have them, as always, bottom right-hand corner of your screen, we can type them in. Anne says the Never Split the Difference is the best negotiating book she's ever read. We have a question from Mir. Do you recommend having a cancellation fee if the seller wants to cancel the MLS listing before the term of the contract is done, especially if you've spent a few $1,000s on the setup, staging, and lots of marketing?
Well, one, that depends on what's common within your marketplace. In my past history as an agent, I would play cancellation fee in if they wanted to go ahead and cancel it prior to the expiration date, if I knew it was going to be a lot of forefronted investment. And the reason being, but I think sometimes when you set that cancellation piece up, it brings that option that they can cancel. So I think one of those things is to look at, do you even want to bring it up in the very beginning of your conversation and say, hey, by the way, if you decide to cancel this is the fee that you're going to be paying. This is what you're going to have. In our area in the United States and in the state of Florida where I'm licensed, there is a section right in our listing agreement that has that cancellation, and we can go ahead and put a flat fee, or you can put a percentage. You know what? I've put in thousands of dollars marketing properties. I had properties that would go from 200,000 to 16 million. And you know what? It's part of the game and it's part of the investment. And you make your decisions wisely. And I think that that's going back to listening to the expectations of the seller. If you have an overpriced listing, you can throw as much money as you want at it. Guess what? It's always going to be an overpriced listing. And one of the things that I have always taught my agents is what actually is a listing agreement. And a lot of times when I ask that question, I hear, it's a contract, it's a promise to produce, you're going to find a seller. When you find the seller, they come to a negotiation, you're going to get compensation. Actually, a listing agreement, and this is where that cancellation piece comes in play, because you are getting staging, you are getting professional photos, you're doing professional printing, you're fronting it. Absolutely. I always have agents look at their business as an entrepreneur. You're a business leader. You are an entrepreneur. Definition of an entrepreneur is somebody that's willing to go ahead and invest their own financial funds and time for a larger outcome, which that is what you are. When you're granting, and how you like that word, not when you're getting your seller to sign, but when you're granting a seller the opportunity to list with you, basically what you're granting them is an interest-free, unsecured loan to market their home that doesn't get reimbursed unless it sells. My theory is make better front-end decisions. If it's really an overpriced listing, and that, you can throw as much money, you can make pretty marketing, great photos, Matterport tours, you can do it all. But in the end, it was a bad business decision. So cancellation, I think it's better positioning yourself going in to what their expectations are and what there aren't. Sometimes, you know, when you have something like that and it comes into play, and again, I don't know what's customary in your area, more people have negative, they like to share negative things. So, you know what, hey, I listed with Kathryn Carr with Century 21 and she wasn't able to sell my house. Well, you know, my side of the story is her expectations were outrageous. But her side is going to be, you know what, she finally let me cancel it, but I had to pay her this, or I had to pay her that, you know. Watch out. I'm always that buyer beware. So go into that transaction knowing exactly what you're granting them, that interest-free unsecured loan to market their home that doesn't get paid back unless it closes. It may not be the answer you wanted, but it's my honest one.
It's an honest one, and that is the answer we want and appreciate. Thank you. Mir's follow-up question was interesting. He said, do I stick to the price? Do I stick to the cancellation?
Well, what do you mean? Do you stick to?
Do I stick to the fee if they want to cancel?
If they want to cancel and you have it, you know, the thing is, if you're going to do something like that, you have to do it across the board with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, you have to build that as part of your business plan, part of the consistency that you bring and that you bring to that transaction. You know, here, and explain to them that you're going to front. I used to do it. I used to explain to them very easily and very simply. My job is to market your home, attract a consumer that's willing to pay the highest price, close with the most appealing terms, and that we do it with least amount of stress. How I'm going to do that is we're going to have staging, we're going to have professional photography, we're going to have marketing, we're going to go ahead and I am, and my broker, we're going to go ahead and invest into that. And, you know, but the problem is we're also going to have to be responsive to what's going on in the market. So if it becomes part of your everyday, they need to be aware of that. And I would just bring it up in the front, not hide it in paperwork. But say, you know, if at some point during our transaction, you find that you actually no longer want my services, be prepared to understand that, you know, I will go ahead and produce the invoices or that this is that fee. I think if you're going to do it and you're going to implement it, it should be consistent, because then it's not, oh, well, Kathryn let me out of my listing and I didn't have to pay one, but she made you pay one. You know, so make sure, because the only thing you have as an agent is your reputation. So if your cancellation's $500, is your reputation worth it?
Fair enough. We've got another question from Sally. It's quite an involved story about a divorce and, you know, conflicting opinions, with one side being more difficult than the other. Listening isn't working, market data isn't working. What strategy would you use next to guide the conversation?
Okay, divorce has been there, done that, never a great choice. But you know what? It's part of reality. People, you know, have relationships and they have to liquidate assets. It's the same thing that happens also, not just in divorces, but property that's get inherited and now it needs to be liquidated so everybody can get their money. You know, some people just want a little bit of money fast and some people want all the money, you know, so there's always that, you know, and again, when we're looking at that divorce, one party wants to stay in that house as long as possible because in that divorce, they were given the right to stay in that house until it sells. Now, the other party normally is no longer in the house and they want to dump the house as fast as they possibly can. And it's finding out also, is there that benefit? And I think, again, it's pulling them into a common goal. This is their last thing that's tying them together. Now, also within a divorce, some people want to be tied. So they're going to make that transaction last as long as possible. And they're going to make it as tough as possible because it's their last opportunity to negotiate back with that other partner. So again, it's finding those emotions and aligning into those emotions. And, you know, so for example, the wife, she's in the house, she's got the kids in the house, and the only time she really gets to talk to her person that she's in love, maybe she didn't want that divorce, is during this transaction. So the longer she can pull it out, the more conversations they can have. The question is, when it comes into divorce and when it comes into these emotions in this different way, it's really making sure that, you know, what actually is their goal? Would it be not more healthy for her, for the kids, if they could go ahead, move through this more positively because their long-term relation is bound with their children, you know, or if it's just a husband and wife and there is no kids, you know, it's also finding out, you know, it normally in that case, somebody's really hurt. And in a divorce where everybody's kind of, you know, mutual and it's an agreement, there isn't that. What comes into play, what you're dealing with, is one of those parties is really hurt. So find out, you know, really what their goal is. Go back and find it. And, you know, depending on, you know, I always say every time and every once in a while, you have to be prepared to walk away. If they don't see any win, sometimes do the takeaway. You know, go and say, you know what, we battled this. We've had a couple different offers. We've had a couple different things. You know, we can't get out of the market, you know, $4 million for a $500,000 house. It's just not going to happen. So we need to get over that. And we need to understand that this is what the market's trending. Now, this is what the market is currently trending. You're underneath a court order to liquidate the house. You know, so if you're stuck on price, offer to pay for an appraisal. You know, you have an appraiser, maybe, you know, I know I can get an expensive appraisal done from one of my vendors for probably a couple $100. So you know what, let's go ahead and just take price off the market. You know, let's just go ahead and get an appraisal. Let's find out exactly what is this house going to appraise for and know how we can position it. And then when we market it, we can support our asking price with an appraisal that was recently done within a time frame. And you can even ask them to go see if they'd be willing to pay for it, and you'll reimburse it at closing. That's always one of the things that I've done before, is say, you know what, in this case, especially if it comes to price, go ahead, maybe just take it all out, take it out of your hands. And then it's, you know what, I understand how both of you feel. Other people have felt this way that I've dealt with, and this is what the appraiser's telling us. So this is the true value of your home on today's market. If that's not acceptable, then, you know, maybe what you have to do is realize that one is going to have to rent back from the other, you know, because if you want more, the market's just not trending now. So think about maybe going and looking at that appraisal piece. But most of the time in those divorces, there's some emotions that are there that are difficult. And we really have to play, you know, and find out who's hurt, why are they hurt, and then how can we isolate that hurt out of the transaction and let them know that this still needs to pass.
We have a similar question here. Someone doesn't want to cause a divorce. A listing where one spouse agrees with the pricing and one who's out to lunch but drives the train. How do you deal with that without dividing the couple? A lot of emotions involved here.
Yeah. So, okay, we got one that says, you know what, this is great. I love everything that you're doing. And then you got another one who isn't really paying attention to what you're saying, from what I understand, not really communicating, but they're the one that comes in as the hard hammer and says yes or no. Is that how I'm understanding the question?
Yes, that's how I was understanding it as well.
Okay. So, you know, your biggest problem is you don't have all players in the same room. Your biggest problem is you have one person that is, they're trusting, they have all your knowledge, they have everything. You need to have a conversation with the other, and, you know, and find out again, what's their goal? What was their expectations? Obviously they executed, you know, if this is, you're trying to get the listing, you know, then you're working towards that. But if you've already gotten the listing, they were willing to execute it with this. So now where does that problem lie? You know, again, you're just not talking to the right person, and the problem you're having is you can't get all three of you together. So depending on what you're allowed with social distancing, you know, maybe find a way that you can actually meet up, get out of that virtual and get nose to nose and toes to toes with a 6 foot distance, but get in that same room, get everybody together, or tell that one that's very aligned with you. So you know what, the next time we come back, we have to have David. So Lisa, I really appreciate that you're here for every meeting, every time we're talking, you're very supportive, but you know what? You guys bought the house together, you're selling the house together, and I need to get everybody on. Now, if they're, you know, in different areas, that's fine. Zoom works perfect. They don't have to drive to a certain location. We can have, you know, as many people as you want. I can have 500 people on my Zoom account if I want. So you know what, let's invite everybody. But you need to find out, again, ask them some great questions, open-ended questions. What were your expectations? What were you really looking forward to? And you know, and throw yourself on the sword a little bit. Say, what have I done that you know, what am I missing? Is there something else that you want me to do? Is there another part that we can go back and review? You know, because normally when you have that unattentive behavior, they don't either understand what's going on or they don't align with what's going on. So you need to get them to, one, to go back and have clarity, and then two, to get online. So it's getting to that person. And, you know, but don't try to play that wife against the husband or the husband against the wife. No, you just want to really get all of them together and then and then really find out what is his stall. And that's all he's doing, is stalling.
Okay. Thank you. Kathryn, we've taken up over an hour of your time. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it, as always. Such good feedback, really useful information for our agents this morning. So thank you.
Let me know how I can ever help. And you guys take care, take safe, and get those transactions going. And have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And everyone, we are back here tomorrow tomorrow. As always, we have 2 webinars left in this series. We'll be making an announcement about what is ahead as well for next week and through the summer. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. Tomorrow's topic is mortgages. This is a topic that we haven't really addressed in the last couple of months, but it's important with everything going on. So we will be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern with Chris Turcotte, the president of Centum Mortgages and part of our family here at Century 21. We look forward to having him. And then we have our mastermind session on Friday with our top producers. So Chiyoko Kakino will be speaking with Gavin Heinz, Sam Elgari, and we're going to have a great conversation with them. So that is on Friday. We look forward to having you join us. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.